says, why has climate change not managed a banger of a campaign that worked, like Make Poverty History?
Okay, so first I'm going to say I don't think that a campaign is marketing. I think it's advertising. I don't think poverty is history, but I can describe why we have made such strides in poverty in the last 10 years, that there are still a billion people who are unspeakably poor on this planet, which is insane and shameful. However, the poorest are less poor than they used to be, and there are fewer of them than there used to be. And part of it is the ratchet that small c capitalism has been able to introduce, that when someone gets a solar panel, they are more likely to read at night. And if they read at night, they're more likely to gain a skill, which makes it more likely that they can get a battery, which makes it more likely that they get a sewing machine, which makes it more likely, et cetera. That doesn't mean it's the most direct path. It doesn't mean that it's fair or evenly distributed. But what we're seeing is that there is a ratchet in place to move something forward. Now, I wrote about global warming on my blog more than 10 years ago for the first time. And I said, it's a really dumb thing to call it. Global is a good thing and warming is a good thing. And we should be calling it atmosphere cancer, because atmosphere is a scientific term and cancer is a chronic degenerative disease. And if you don't pay attention to it, you're going to die. And there are very few cancer deniers in the world for a good reason. So what happened with climate change is, number one, it is a slow process that's hard to take good photos of. That's not true for poverty. Number two is it is related to each of us ultimately seeing our demise. That's a hard thing to sell. It's hard to sell life insurance and funeral services. It's hard to say to people, we're all going to die. And number three is it's complicated and it involves statistics. And as we've seen with the vaccine nonsense of people making up stories that aren't true, when something is complicated and involves statistics, people freak out because human beings are bad at that. And now we've got a commercial industry, the oil business, that had an incentive to put misinformation into the world, bad marketing, knowing that they were doing it, to cloud the waters for 20 years, which they did. So the opportunity is to figure out how to tell the right story to the right people, the smallest viable audience, to put a ratchet in place so that that ratchet persists in a race to solve the problem. And for me, that feels like carbon allocation. It feels like creating an economic incentive for technologists and institutions to compete against each other to either use less carbon or to sequester carbon. If we had that regime in place, then the race would be on, and it would be a race in the correct direction. What we know is that recycling plastic bottles is a myth. It was invented by the plastic industry. It doesn't work. Making people feel bad for drinking bottled water isn't going to solve our atmosphere cancer problem. What might solve it is the fact that there's a new electric motor that's about to come out that uses 1/3 as much electricity as any other electric motor, and it can be retrofitted up and down the supply chain. What might change it is that solar panels are now cheaper than coal. These things that humans are good at, moving in the right direction. So I think the mistake was not identifying the 10,000 humans, that's all we needed, who could put in place a worldwide carbon regime, because if we had had that in place, we'd be way ahead of the game. Another rant.